The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Buddy joined your channel.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. This is All You Can Eat. It is the podcast about deliciousness. I am your host, Rob Rosenthal. Delighted to be with you here live in the middle of the summer, coming to you from New York City, New York. What are we looking at here? What is the date? It's July the 24th. It's a beautiful day here in the neighborhood, as Mr. Rogers would say. There's a Mr. Rogers movie coming out, in fact, sometime this year, starring Tom Hanks, of course, because he's committed to playing essentially every American in history. I mentioned that I'm coming to you live because most podcasts, it seems to me, are produced in a studio and edited for perfection. So that way when they get uploaded, you are, the listener is tuned in to to a perfect, production. I'm not about perfection. That's clear. That'll become clear to you as I make mistake after mistake, followed by errors and technical glitches. But that's that's the thing. I like going live. You never really know what it's going to be. I'll tell you what's on tonight's episode, though. When I say all you can eat is about deliciousness, I have been eating it all, and all of it has been delicious. I want to report on that. And this time it's not from some faraway trip, because I've been on a lot of those lately. And I've spoken about that. But tonight it's about eating and drinking, especially this time of year, the summer, when the food is good and the juice is flowing, if you will. So I have for you a little bit about cocktails. I have a ton, I would say a shit ton actually, of recipes which I discover and I go, oh, that looks good. I want to make that. I'm not saying I'm going to make them all, but I use this forum and this format to throw out ideas that people may look at and go or hear and say, hey, you know what? That sounds good. Another thing that may happen on this evening's show, because it's that kind of episode number 60, incidentally, of All You Can Eat. My 60th podcast. I'm starting to figure it out. Maybe by 100 I'll have this thing in order. But the thing I want to say is that, I put some ideas out there, and my hope is that people go, oh, you know what, that sounds interesting. But like tonight, I'm all over the place. Honestly, I just came back from an event, like an excellent event, where my job was to sample oysters and drink white wine. Let me tell you something. I get a lot of invitations. I do not accept a lot of them. But the ones I accept, they're good. I'll talk to you about that, because I literally got back 45 minutes ago, just in time for the podcast, to report on a variety of subjects, one of which is my trip to Governor's Island today to sample oysters and white wine. Let me tell you something, on a beautiful day, 82 and sunny, that's a nice thing to do. That's one. I have in the background here an interview, discussion, conversation that I had within the last week with a very famous, world-famous chef by the name of Jean-Georges Vangeristen. Now, if you are a super knowledgeable food person, professional, you go, oh yeah, Jean-Georges, I've heard of him before. This guy is like literally, he's a celebrity chef, not in the way that a lot of the TV guys are. Jean-Georges is not a guy that gets a lot of exposure, but he runs, 35, 38, 39 restaurants around the world, and they're good restaurants. I mean, great restaurants, some of them, and inventive and great. So I have an interview here in the background, which I suspect I'm going to have time for. I hope, if not this week, next. But the thing that I would like to point out about it is in the conversation with Jean-Georges. I ask him, as I do anybody that's a professional cook, because my formula is always, and I wrote a whole book about this, most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort, right? Most taste, okay. Fewest ingredients, I just don't give me more than 5 or 6, please. And least effort, lazy. Smart, funny, easy, tasty, this kind of thing, right? So I said to Jean-Georges in my 12 minutes with him, one of my questions is, hey, you cook at home? Yes, I do. He said the one difference when I cook at home is that rather than plating the food, which which he's doing basically at 39 restaurants, plating the food, putting it on plates, making it look fabulous. At home, everything comes out of one pot. Everybody serves themselves. But I said to him, Jean-Georges, what give me your recommendation for most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort? And he immediately said, this time of year, I would go with a summer corn tomato salad. Now, immediately this rings a bell for me. Why? Because this time of year, at least in my part of the country, and perhaps way beyond my part of the country, but all over the place, the corn is getting good, and the tomatoes as well. And if you follow me at all, you know that my entire orientation is predicated on the idea of get the best ingredients you can and don't mess them up too much. So when corn is in season, which is to say July, August, when tomatoes are in season, July, August, you have the makings of an extraordinary dish, salad. And what he said to me, that kind of kicked in, he goes, like jalapeno or serrano. So I've got corn, I've got tomato, and he says jalapeno or serrano. We can talk about the difference. They're both hot, slightly spicy peppers. I prefer serrano, whatever, but there's nothing wrong with jalapeno. And then he says basil, right? So he's got 4 primary ingredients in this salad. Perfect. Corn, which he would take off the cob. He literally cut the kernels off the cob and saute that a little bit in oil. I don't, but that's fine. I steam it for a couple of minutes and then cut the kernels off. Tomatoes, which, whatever you can get that's local, that's grown, that's coming without a lot of, we're not talking about hothouse here. We're talking about grown out of the ground tomatoes, July, August, tomatoes that are coming up out of a farm. I don't care whether they're, beefsteaks. I don't care whether they're Roma. I don't, cherry, grape. I don't care. As long as they taste good with nothing, you want those in the salad. Then he's going to cut up some, like I said, serrano or jalapeno, and then hit it up with some basil. Now, you still need salt, correct? You're still going to need olive oil, yes. And then you're going to give it a hit of acidity, which in my case would come from a squeeze of lemon. Some people would use a vinegar. And I suppose you can make a case for lime. But, okay, fine. I spoke to him a week ago that night, or the following day. I go to the farmer's market. They got corn, they got tomatoes. I pick up a couple of serranos and some basil. I'm telling you something, man. And wait, no, more to it. I had arugula in the house. And with arugula, you get a little bit of that, I don't know, what would you say? Crunchy bitterness, like a little bitter, good. And I had a little bit of red onion, which I sliced very thin, threw that in there. This salad was mind-blowingly good. I mean, it's simple, right? It's simple, it's fresh, it's clean. It is magnificent, so good that the following night I made the exact same salad. Anyway, I mention all of this because I am sitting right now in front of dozens and dozens and dozens of recipes. We're not going to get to them all. But again, kind of the point tonight is just to turn you on to some ideas that may inspire your taste buds and, more importantly, inspire you to go pick up a couple of ingredients, not too many, and make something fabulous. I also, by the way, that same night that I made that corn and tomato salad, it's a legit question to go, what are you serving as the main course, Rob? And at the farmer's market, there was a guy selling scallops. All I could say is that when scallops are fresh, you could have them raw. I mean, if you went to a sushi restaurant, they would slice it up and charge a lot of money for it. I've eaten them raw. Up in Portland, Maine. Oh my, they melt in your mouth when they're fresh and raw. But I get beautiful scallops here at the farmer's market, and when you smell them, I'll tell you what, you don't smell anything. I mean, you don't smell fish. You don't smell. It's like maybe you smell a little bit of a sweetness of the sea, and they don't require a lot of work. I mean, you hit them up with some salt, a little bit of pepper. I don't know. You maybe have a little. That's all really, seasoned salt and hot oil in a saute pan, and maybe a couple of minutes on one side, then maybe one on the following, so that they're kind of barely cooked through, almost a touch in the middle of the scallop of translucence. They are fantastical. Just, God, just such beautiful food. And on the side, you have that salad, corn and tomato and serrano and basil with a lemon and an olive oil dressing, maybe a little bit of red onion and arugula I threw in. That's a beautiful meal. Now, all that said, I'm going to pour myself now. Oh, I'm looking at a half-empty glass because I had the first half, and I'm having a frozen Negroni. And you're saying to yourself, I like a Negroni, or theoretically you could be saying to yourself, what's a Negroni? I've heard of it. I'm not sure what it is. Okay. New York Times this week publishes an article. The Negroni is a century old, but just hitting its stride. Can you imagine that? As it turns 100, the bracing cocktail is wildly popular with a host of new riffs and variations. Now, I like the idea that there are new riffs and variations, but it's important to understand where the origin, where the original one comes from. Because sometimes, as a purist, all that really matters to me is the original. But I have already deviated from that. So the original Negroni, let's see, it's very simple. The original Negroni is coming to you with the following. It's one part of gin. Now, the Times would tell you they like preferably Bombay Dry, but that's neither here nor there. It's 1 ounce of gin, and it's 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and 1 ounce of Campari, a slightly bitter Italian liqueur. 3 ingredients, each in the exact same proportion. Now, this matters, right? Because when it comes to cocktails, it's kind of like baking, which is to say that the portions and matter. So the classic Negroni is 1 ounce of gin, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and 1 ounce of Campari, and it's garnished with an orange twist. The way it's typically served is that you put the 3 ingredients into a kind of a mixing glass over ice, and you keep stirring the thing until it's well chilled. I'm talking about, a half a minute. You're stirring, some gin, some sweet vermouth, some Campari. Lovely, 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 ice cold, and then you strain it into a glass. I suppose it could be a coupe, could be like a martini glass, or you could put it over ice, and you serve it with an orange twist. Now, what I want to say, I'm going to take a sip of mine. Hang on a second. So the thing that you notice about it is that slight touch of of bitterness that's coming off the Campari. And yet at the same time, it's not so bitter because you have that little touch of vermouth in there as well, the sweet vermouth. So that's a balance right there. The gin is what's giving you the buzz. And the orange twist just ain't going to hurt. It's a little fruity highlight. The article in the Times talks about all these different variations on the Negroni, right? So that's the classic, those three ingredients. Now, the thing I want to say about it is that when it comes to adaptations, especially in the summer, one of the things that people do, and I find it really fascinating, is the idea of freezing drinks. Like, why would you not take those ingredients with that ice and put it in the blender and make a frozen Negroni? Like, how great would that be? I mentioned it because last night I meet a friend at a Spanish tapas type restaurant, and they have I went in, and you know the Spanish are interesting. Not only is their food extraordinary, but they're very big on gin and tonic. They make a tall gin and tonic over in Spain, often garnished with some orange. But here's the thing: I go into the restaurant. He said, "What do you have last night?" And I said, "Well, gin. What do you have with gin?" Well, you know, we could do a gin and tonic, but we're famous for their, for a gin with a frozen gin, lemonade and basil. Now, I hear this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I never really loved the herbs in a cocktail. Basil, rosemary. They have there's a concept called shrubs, right, where you're mixing cocktails with like a bunch of rosemary or thyme. I was never into the kind of savory cocktail. I'll take a regular gin and tonic. Give me the pig and blanket on the side. But last night he says, yeah, well, no, this is our signature drink. Frozen gin, lemonade, basil. I said, fine, let me have one of those. So they bring it over to the table. Now what you have to know when you have a frozen cocktail is that now all of a sudden texture matters, right? So this clearly, it took only a second. So they have it in in a slushy machine. Like if you go into 7-Eleven and you get a slushy, you know that texture I'm talking about? That is the texture that they served this gin and lemonade and basil in last night. It is perfect, that texture, especially when it's 85 degrees in the summer and you have a straw. And when I say a straw, I mean an environmentally responsible one. Because that matters. And I took a sip of this thing. This frozen gin, lemonade, basil thing. And I was like, I knew from the first sip, it's a tall glass. I had one sip and I knew after the one sip, call me, name me names. But I'm telling you, I knew after the first sip I was having another one. Like that's how good it was. I go, oh, I could live on this thing. That's how good that cocktail was. Frozen gin, lemonade, basil, coming out of a slushy machine. Holy crap, that was good. Woo! I want another, and I had another. So tonight I'm thinking Negroni, and I'm thinking not the variations that may use, bourbon. That's not Negroni. Like if you replace the gin with the bourbon, you can make another drink. I believe it's called the Boulevardier, which is, that's not even easy to ask for in a place. Like a bartender comes over, are you going to be the guy that goes, I will have a Boulevardier, please? Anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that I get back tonight from this event downtown, eating oysters and drinking Sancerre. I'm going to have a cocktail because I like you people to sit down with me for the 1 hour that we have between 8 and 9 on Wednesday night. Sit down with a cocktail or whenever you listen to the show. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm here. And I decided tonight to have a Negroni because I wanted to talk about not only the Negroni article in the New York Times, but the variations thereof. But I was influenced by the drink I had last night, right? So I took my Negroni ingredients. Again, 1 part gin. Notice I didn't say 1 ounce, but 1 part. 1 part sweet vermouth. 1 part Campari. And I put it over ice because that is the instruction. And I figured as long as I have ice, for whatever reason, I had some lemonade in the fridge. So I throw in a shot of that. And when I say a shot, I mean 3 parts, right? So I've doubled the volume. So let's say an ounce or an ounce and a half of gin, an ounce, ounce and a half of Campari, ounce, ounce and a half of the sweet vermouth, 3 ounces of 3.5, 4 ounces, whatever, of the lemonade, a bunch of ice. I put it in the blender and I freeze this mother up. And I am now drinking. Call it what you want, man. It's unbelievably great. I'm drinking it right now, and I'm thinking I need a second. And I can't have it. I can't have that second because I'm here with you, and we have things to talk about. But that's a good cocktail right there. Whoa! Woo! Hey! Hana! So that's your classic. The Kingston Negroni is made with rum and sweet vermouth and Campari. In other words, you substitute out. What do they say? They say they don't say substitute out, but yeah, you get the idea. You don't have to use gin. You could use rum and sweet vermouth and Campari. So that one's called a Kingston Negroni. And then they do. This one's a little too complicated here, but you have what's her name there? Stephanie Izzard, very super talented lady, chef, Chicago. Restaurant is called The Girl and the Goat. She has a drink over at her place called the Negroni and the Goat. And what she's using in that one is she's using the gin, and she's using a little bit of the sweet vermouth, not as much. And she's using, well, here's the thing. I'm going to give you the exact, if you want. Because it's a cocktail that would be interesting. I haven't had it, but I like, you ever see people drinking that Aperol Spritz? So the Aperol is an interesting liqueur, kind of sweet, kind of bitter, kind of citrusy. Anyway, 1.25 ounces of gin, 3/4 of an ounce of Aperol, 3/4 of an ounce of that sweet vermouth, and then 1/2 ounce of Verna Amaro. So if you're and an orange slice. So if you're a cocktail person, you want to stick to the proportions. And what I would tell you is, Aperol, Italian liqueur, red, slightly bitter, slightly sweet, sweet vermouth we talked about, and Amaro is generally consumed after a meal, also kind of a bitter and a digestive. Anyway, so the point is that you can do whatever you want with these Negronis in terms of variations and play with your own. And that's exactly what I did this evening by throwing into my classic Negroni ingredients some lemonade and ice and blended, and that's good. I'm going to have one more sip right now. Before I tell you about this evening's event, and I tell you this because, let me see if I can find, I cannot. Everything, chef, sandwiches. No, I've totally lost it, and it's okay. I go to an event, which, it's not really fair that I lost this thing. Let me just see if I can find it. I'm invited to an event, and it's interesting to me because I have lived here and around the city of New York for my entire life, and today, only 2 hours ago, 3, it was the first time in my life that I went to Governor's Island. Really. I've been here my entire life. I've lived in this city at least for the last 40 years. And today, first time ever at a place called Governor's Island. Where is Governor's Island? Well, on the southern tip of Manhattan, west side, Battery Park, east side, Battery Park, There's a ferry. There's a ferry that takes you over to see the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island. There's a ferry that takes you over to Governor's Island. The ferry to Governor's Island, I'm going to say $3, but I don't know for sure. It's not like a big. Well, it's an 8 to 9 minute ferry ride over to Governor's Island, and they're doing something interesting over there. There's a project called the Billion Oyster Project. Like, that sounds like a lot of oysters, and especially, by the way, because it's oysters that you're not going to eat. But there's a Billion Oyster Project nonprofit happening over at Governor's Island, and they're growing, they're cultivating, planting, harvesting oysters. And guess what? Can't eat them. They are not for human consumption. And so now you're saying, wait a second, I'm a food person. I love oysters. I'm not sure about the water here one way or the other. I live here. We have the best drinking water probably in the country, but it ain't coming from the Hudson River and it ain't coming from the East River. And so, so you're going, wait a second, let me just see if I understand this. You're cultivating oysters down here around Governor's Island, but you can't eat them. And the answer is no, you can't. So what you then learn is that it's actually before last century, right around the 1900s or prior to that, this New York Harbor area was the largest oyster harvesting, growing area, perhaps certainly in this country. It was literally a hotbed of oyster growth, but that stopped. And why did it stop? I don't know. It's a combination of things. It was overdone. It was, it could have, whatever the reasons are that species go extinct, the oyster business went away. Right around 1900 or so. But what was discovered by your scientists, and I am still one of those people that believes in science, is in an era of sustainability, let's take care of things, let's take care of the earth, let's see if we can grow and cultivate and continue growing without destroying. One of the things that we discover is that one of the most effective ways of filtering, cleaning, clarifying a body of water is with oysters. Like, this is an unbelievable truth, but what I'm explaining to you is that the Billion Oyster Project, and I'm not looking at notes, so I apologize for that, but the concept is very simple, that the cultivation of oysters in the water down there in the New York Harbor is meant to basically clean and clarify the water. Like, this is how you do it. You don't throw in chemicals. You don't need processing plants. There's nothing that's going to be more effective than nature itself, because oysters, they filter things. Like, the stuff runs through them. It's really unbelievable. So you're going down to Governor's Island for your $3 ferry ride, and you're on an island, and you're looking at the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the Freedom Tower and the Brooklyn Bridge. It's spectacular, especially when it's 82 and sunny. And they have an operation down there, the Billion Oyster Project, public, funded by I don't know, the federal and local government. Fantastic project. Just cultivating oysters, not to eat, but literally for to make the water good. And so, one of the corporate kind of sponsors is a French wine company that's imported here into the United States. It's called William Fevre, Fevre. So Fevre, contributes some money to the project, and because they're all about sustainability over in their home country of France, where they're in the Chablis region, making really fantastic Chablis. Now, it's no coincidence. Here's learning number 2, right? If you're going to eat oysters, there are 3 white wines, 4 if you count champagne, but 3 white wines that are considered the classic partners, accompaniments, complements to oysters. One is Chablis, one is Sancerre, one is Sauvignon Blanc. But if you listen to the oyster expert, and we had one there today, so sorry his name's not in front of me, I'm sorry, but it's just because I just got back here. You can't go wrong with the Chablis. You could go wrong theoretically with the Sauvignon Blanc. You could go wrong with the Sancerre. I love them both. I love them with oysters. But because every oyster, whether it's West Coast or East Coast or wherever it's coming from around the world, has a different kind of taste profile characteristic. Some white wines are better than others. But Chablis, you can never go wrong. And William Fevre, F-E-V-R-E, is putting out some high-end, high-quality, beautiful Chablis. I tried 2015. I tried 2017. I'm pretty sure I tried 2018. I tried whatever they put in front of me, as you can tell. Woo! Hello! And that's delicious with oysters. And it's not inexpensive. Sometimes you're drinking stuff. I'm not the expert in the wine. I'm good at understanding that, that's really good. That stuff is really fine. I'm drinking some Premier Cru First Growth Chablis from William Fevre. I'm eating oysters. I'm in heaven. And then I said to the guy from the company, just out of curiosity, like, what's the price of this stuff? Like, what's the price point on this wine? 65. Whoa, $65. That's a commitment. But, I would also say this, that, you get what you pay for. I mean, this is some serious grapes. And, whether you're paying or you're throwing it on an expense account, William Fevre, whether it's 2015, 17, or 18, that Chablis Grand Cru, Grand Cru is, that's like, woo, that's good stuff right there. Fantastic with the oysters, Billion Oyster Project, Governor's Island, New York. And, I know some people are tentative about oysters. They can't handle it, the texture, the look, the thing. I don't know. I feel, if you don't like it, you don't like it, but you're missing something. That literally, I said, as I'm eating oysters and having a little bit of the Chablis, I'm thinking to myself, and I said out loud, this is my happy meal. So that's where we were today. That is where we were today, eating the oysters, drinking the Chablis, William Fevre, Governor's Island. Last night, frozen gin cocktail. Today, frozen Negroni with lemonade. All you can eat. Rob Rosenthal, summer 2019. I'm eating everything, my people. Can't hold my stomach in anymore. But but summer is great eating, right? I mean, like summer, you want to be, you want to go in light and then enjoy the bounty of this season. Corn, tomato. I mean, you got your nectarines going to be showing up soon. Yeah, it's a good time to be eating. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Now, I also catch. I'm trying to see what we do here next. It's not out of the question that we put on a couple of minutes of my time with Jean-Georges, who, as I mentioned to you, is easily, I mean, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of great chefs, but this guy is special, because not only because he runs restaurants around the world, and great restaurants, but I have to say, Jean-Georges to me was one of the first guys that introduced the idea of what I would call global cuisine. He spent a lot of time in kind of the Asia Pacific area, the Vietnam, and he introduced the world to kind of this hybrid of kind of French flavors and French technique and the flavors that were coming out of, that part of the world. Asia Pacific, Vietnam, lemongrass. I have to say that he was doing global cuisine before global cuisine was cool. This guy's the real deal. I mean, he can cook. You can go to any one, Jean-Georges in New York. But I mean, I remember being at Vang. Everything that he's done really is very high quality, very inventive, very hybrid. And so, anyway, the reason that I get on with him is because somewhere within the last couple of days, or right about now, he's opened up another restaurant in Philadelphia. So if you are from the Philadelphia area, you're going to want to go to Jean-Georges' new restaurant in the Four Seasons Hotel. It's on the 60th floor there. So you're going to be overlooking the city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, the city of the Philadelphia Flyers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Phillies. And you're going to get your first Michelin star chef down there in Philadelphia, and good for you. The Phillies, I mean, I'm a fan of, I like cities. And since I'm an East Coast guy, I don't even feel competitive. I like East Coast cities, Philadelphia, Boston, New York. Jean-Georges has a place over there in the Four Seasons that's just opening now, and I would go. If I were living in Philly, I would get there. And so, let me see if I can make this work. This would be unbelievable because, when you go live, you never really know. I'm going to hit a button, right? And in that button, I'm going to have a conversation with the great Jean-Georges. I'm going to apologize in advance in that when you have a conversation with somebody on the telephone, yes, I said telephone, one of the things that happens, because you can't see the person, is that there will be slight overlaps in our conversation. And I hate listening to that. So it's imperfect in that way. But I get on the horn with Jean-Georges, talk to him about not only, his restaurant, but as I said to you before, what am I making here in the kitchen? And I have a nice chat with Jean-Georges, and I'm going to play it for you now if it works. And I may stop in the event that there's something that I notice in our conversation that feels like it might not be. He's got a little bit of the French accent, which is fine. There may be a word or two here and there that are hard to decipher. I may come back. Let's see if I can make this work. My conversation with the great and talented Jean-Georges van der Richten, who just opened this fabulous place at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. Let's see if this works.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you.
Thank you for calling me.
No, my pleasure. Well, let me just start with one. Even before we get into the new restaurant in Philadelphia, when you were born and raised in a country that reveres its cuisine, when did you fall in love with food?
I grew up with good food. Sounds like a cliche, but my mother was a great cook. My father was cooking only on Sunday to avoid church. So, I grew up with great food. And my parents had a business which was at home. So we were cooking. It was like a small restaurant, my mother and my grandmother were cooking for 30, 35 people for lunch and 20 for dinner. It was still the time where 3 generations were living under the same roof. So there was a lot of food, a lot of things. But I never had interest into going to the kitchen. But when I was a kid, I was always the entertainer of the family. I did all the birthday for my parents, for my brother, sister, cousin. So I was doing the lighting, the music, but no food. So, and I think today I feel like my job is kind of entertaining people. On top of it, you feed them, so it becomes a complete thing that I'm doing now. So I would say, I was a drop out of school when I was 16. So my parents felt bad. They took me to a great restaurant for my 16. As soon as I saw the ballet of the waiters, I saw the whole, food. I didn't know you could do a living out of food. For me, food was only at home, with the family. The restaurant was not. It was in 1973, so restaurant was not very. Little restaurant, bistro, things like that, wine stube in Alsace were popular, but the big restaurant, there was only one in Alsace, so L'Auberge de Lille, that's where we went, and I was very lucky because as soon as I saw that space and the ballet and the food, I was like, this is what I want to do,
I'm just going to stop it here for a second because I could not help but be impressed by his use, not once but twice, of the word ballet. This is classic French. This is a guy here who is telling you 16 or so, drops out of school, but he grew up around food, right? Because his mom she's got a restaurant, they're feeding people every day. He's not really thinking of it as a living or as anything other than this is what my people do. And at 16 he drops out and they take him, his parents, to this fabulous place. This amazing restaurant, right? And he sees what's going on in the restaurant and he describes it as a ballet and knows that in that moment, that's what it is that he wants to do. He goes on to say here that he was the entertainer in the family. So here's a guy who's not only fascinated by the ballet that's taking place in the restaurant, meaning the movement of the food, of the front, of the waiter, of the maitre d', but the aspect that, it's a source of entertainment. I go on here.
That's great.
My eyes open up. So I was a late bloomer. I was 16 years old before I'm an chef.
Love when
But I grew up with good foods,
Yeah. Well, I've always said also about you that you were doing global cuisine before global cuisine was cool. You've really been the leader, if not kind of the creator of doing a global kind of fresh, interesting, multicultural concept. So,
thank you.
What's going on at the new place, at the new restaurant, your new place in Philadelphia? What's kind of the culinary concept behind it?
It's a beautiful building. As they told you about, the Concast Technology Center, and it's 60 floor. It was developed by the great architect, Lord Norman Foster. We're on the top floor. We have on the 60th floor, we have a kind of a lounge, JG Sky High, and then we have the Jean-Georges restaurant. So, once you, in 1980, I was lucky enough to go to spend 5 years in Asia. Mm-hmm. So my French background, the 5 years, Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo. Going to those places, you learn a great deal of new ingredients and new flavors. So that's not gonna leave me. That's part of my DNA now. It's like French background, Asian ingredients, spices, and flavors. So we're gonna bring that to Philadelphia, of course. That's part of what we do, or what I do. Definitely gonna have the Asian spices in the food here, for sure. We have a section which is plant-based as well, which is I really enjoy my vegetables, my plants, and I think it's the future of food. But not, I was talking to somebody earlier, not turned into a burger, but, beautiful vegetable, spices mixed with it, and also we're gonna have great fish and meat, but, the concept is really my food here.
I'm sorry. I'm stopping again just to kind of clarify and reiterate. The concept is my food. The restaurant is called Jean-Georges. It's on the, I don't know, I want to say the 60th floor of the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. And here's a guy that traveled throughout Asia, Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, French trained, obviously, French man, French trained, but inspired by Asian flavors. And his cuisine is essentially the marriage of French and Asian. Let's go on with Jean-Georges.
Yeah, and try to incorporate, try to be accepted in town because it's a great food town here. You know, lots of different variety restaurants, different people cooking different ways, and so hopefully we fit into the Philadelphia scene of culinary scene.
Yep. Well, just
once you start eating,
order for me though. Give me a dish or two that I'm hopping on a train for to come down to Philadelphia.
Oh my God, you have to come here.
I know.
What dish would be? We have a beautiful tuna tartare with ginger.
Nice.
Actually, we cut the tuna like noodles. So it looks like udon, but actually the tuna only gives a whole different texture on avocado with a ginger soy dressing. We do many dishes. Right now we're doing a great lobster with sweet corn from a market close by, which is the corn is being picked like a half an hour from here. Roasted potato, a beautiful scented with lemongrass. We're doing a pizza with. Instead of a red tomato sauce, we're doing sun gold tomato sauce. So it's a yellow tomato sauce, 3 cheeses, squash blossoms, delicious. This kind of food, with a lot of flavor, colors, because opening in August is probably a lot of people on vacation, but I really enjoy that season of having the corn, the tomato, the summer squash, the beautiful beets, everything comes out of the ground. I mean, this is like a best season to open.
Yeah,
so, especially in Philadelphia.
I agree with you, and you're making me hungry.
we have a call.
What can you think? What's the best advice in general? What's the best advice that you can recall ever receiving? Or advice, if you want, Jean-Georges, or advice that you would give somebody.
I mean, all my chefs, when I work in France, all my 4 mentors actually, Hebalin, Louis Houtier, Paul Bocuse, in Germany, Eckhart Witzigmann, they all told me, keep the food simple, the freshest you can buy, and don't mix more than 3 ingredients. Keep it really clear. Life is complicated enough, so when it comes to eating, you have to keep it really direct, simple, clear. All
right, this is crucial. Honestly, I'm looking at a video of the guy because they recorded a video, and I'm playing you the audio of it. He is easily one of the most successful restaurateurs in the world. A brilliant chef who I like I said before, who probably introduced the idea of this kind of global fusion cuisine. And when asked about advice, he mentioned his mentors, one of whom was Paul Bocuse, right? I mean, also regarded as one of the greatest chefs in history. And then when he goes on to describe his kind of what the advice is that he gives to his own chefs, listen to what he's saying. He's saying it's the clarity of the flavor. It's not a lot of ingredients. It's not too many things going on. It's the clarity of the flavor based on the power of the actual ingredient. I just love this. He actually elaborates even further. Here we go.
If you
I could not agree more. I always tell people, and I wrote a cookbook myself, I always say the very simple concept: get the best ingredients you can and don't mess them up too much. Exactly.
And then keep the flavor very clear and very direct. But when you're a young chef, you always try to put everything on a plate. So I did a mistake in the past. 35 years ago, I was putting 16 ingredients on a plate. And today, I take all the superfluous away and just go to the essential.
I love that. I love it. Do you, by the way, even though you're, running restaurants around the world, do you still cook at home?
I cook a lot at home, but I don't put any weekend. The country house an hour away from New York, and that's where I invite family is there, and then friends, and I cook every weekend. But I don't put anything on a plate. Everything goes on a pot, in the middle of the table, and you serve yourself. Because all week I plate food. When I'm home, I don't plate anything. You serve yourself. You serve yourself.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. And I agree with you, by the way. Summertime, especially if you're here on the East Coast and you have New Jersey and you have Long Island, we have the best tomatoes and corn. It's a great time to cook. Let me ask you this. Speaking of cooking at home and the philosophy that we share about keeping it simple, give people something that they can do at home that has like the most taste, the fewest ingredients, and takes the least effort. What would be a suggestion?
Right now, this minute, I would do corn, because I picked up some corn yesterday morning. Just keep it, peel the corn with a knife, just get the kernels off. Not too close to the core, because otherwise it comes down a little. If the corn is not fresh, it's not 2-3 days old. You have to really keep it on the edge. Saute in olive oil, a little bit of sliced jalapeno, cherry tomatoes, little basil. You can eat this with anything you want. But add a little chili. The chili is important. So you have the sweetness, you have a little sourness from the tomato, you have a little bit of a heat from the serrano or jalapeno. Bunch of herbs. That's it.
Love that. I'm gonna be making that as soon as I'm getting the local corn.
And if you wanted that for breakfast, you can crack some eggs in it. You can serve it on fish, on meat.
Okay.
Simple. It's just that fragrance of corn. I don't really corn in America. Corn in Alsace was only feeding the animals, not for eating. But the corn is so sweet on this part of the world. It's so amazing. So amazing.
Let me ask you one more question before we go back and tell people where to find the restaurant and more information on the restaurant. Because I asked people, I said, what would you ask John George? And I thought that one of the best questions I got was, what are people afraid to eat that they should really love?
We don't do too much of the fear factor in my restaurant, but
no, of course not you. I'm just saying in general. You know what I mean? I always tell people, for example, you have to have octopus. People are afraid of octopus, and I love it. What's the kind of food that you think people are generally afraid of, but they should love to eat?
Sometimes the wild games, like venison or pheasant. Sometimes people think it's too strong, too gamey. I grew up with a lot of inners too. Chicken liver and things like that. That people. They're good for you, and if you find the right. So don't be afraid of inners. People are not crazy about it.
John George, where they can get what's the easiest place to go to get some more information about the restaurant, so they can see what's going on, make a reservation, that kind of thing. What's the easiest way to access information about a new place?
For more information, just go to fourseasons.com/Philadelphia/. So you would have all information there to how to reach us and to come see us. We'd love for everyone to visit us, please. Best view of Philadelphia, and hopefully we give you the best food.
That's fantastic. And let me just ask you finally this. Apparently you're very excited about street food in Thailand. What if I were going to Bangkok anytime soon, what should I be looking for on the street over there? What's the food I'm being eaten over there?
Everything, from Tom Yam Kong, which is the shrimp soup, Tom Kakai, the chicken coconut soup, any rice dishes, there's a great market in Bangkok called Otoko.
Mm-hmm.
Otoko. And it's really amazing. That's where you find there's not too many tourists. It's all local, and the food is sweet, sour, spicy, salty. There's amazing fish they do. It's called plakapong. It's a fish that they salt for 2 hours, sun dry a little bit, and then they fry it, and they serve you that with a lemongrass dip. It's just every dish in Thailand is spectacular.
It is a great dish. Well, I'll tell you this. I know that your time is short, so I want to thank you. Wish you the best of luck in the new place. I look forward to hopping on on an Amtrak Express and popping down there one day and coming up to what is it, the 60th floor over there, and trying the new restaurant.
You're Rob. I would love to cook for you one day. Thank you.
That'd be my pleasure.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my man.
Well, yeah, you got that. There you have my conversation with the great Jean-Georges von Gerichten. Honestly, a world-class chef. I was thrilled, not only to speak with him in general, because he's super talented, lovely guy, but philosophically, we're on that. I'm on his wavelength there. Get some good ingredients. Don't mess them up too much. So I'm telling you this. I didn't get a chance to read any one of the 100 recipes that I'm looking at right now. Just the way the show went. But if you can get yourself some good quality tomatoes, and when I say good quality, get them out of the ground. Don't get hot house. Don't get packaged. Get them, if not at a farmer's market, but you go to your local, supermarket. Make sure that they're locally grown tomatoes. And if they're good, and you can get some corn, and that's good, that is the basis for an outstanding salad. I agree with him that if you throw in a little bit of jalapeno or serrano for a little bit of the heat, the sweet comes from the corn, the acidity comes from the tomato, basil for fragrance, olive oil and lemon for dressing, salt, you're good. And listen to what he said. It's unbelievable. It's true. You put that on top of a piece of grilled chicken, right? If you don't serve it as a salad, you can put it on top of a piece of grilled chicken or fish. Listen to what he said. Crack some eggs and throw that in the eggs in the omelet in the morning. Whoa! Hello! In which case I might throw in a little touch of goat cheese. Anyway, it's time for us because they're gonna start hitting me up here now to say goodbye. Episode number 60, All You Can Eat, the podcast about deliciousness. This is Rob Rosenthal coming to you from New York. 2 messages for you, my friends. One is that you can buy my book. It's called Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. It's on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, etc. And the other is come back next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. right here. And you can listen live, and by 12 hours from now, we'll be all over iHeartRadio. Look up Rob Rosenthal or All You Can Eat. And remember this, my friends, as I always say, life is short, so never waste a meal. Good night.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man.